In this video, we're talking about equality of men and women.
We'll be having an inspiration and some interviews.
So stick around for ever advancing human civilization. Welcome to Ever Advancing Human Civilization. I'm Masood.
I'm Lynette.
So before we get on to the topic of this week, Lynette, so we usually at the beginning we talk about good news or people who inspire us.
Right.
So since this is the topic of equality of men and women, I was going to ask you, who inspires you in terms of, like, you know, is there a woman that inspired you throughout history?
Throughout history, well, there have been a lot of women, but in the Baha'i faith in particular, and in fact I was drawn to the Baha'i faith because of its teaching about equality between men and women. And when I first heard the story of a woman who believed in the Bab, who was the forerunner of Baha'u'llah, and she was listening one day to the Bab give an address, and in those days in Iran, women were not allowed to be in the same room as men, so she was sitting behind a curtain, and I believe that she came out from behind the curtain and without a veil and shocked everyone. But she said, now is the time when women should achieve full equality with men. And I thought that was very, very courageous of her in those days when women just were not seen or heard at all. That she did that remarkably courageous thing. She was a poet, and she was an amazing woman for her time. In fact, a play was written about her.
Yeah, there was,
and I think her role was played by Sarah Bernhardt.
Oh, okay.
So she has really gone down in history as a forerunner of women's liberation. Yeah. So that was my inspiration.
Oh, thank you for sharing that.
You're welcome. Yeah.
So today's topic, as we mentioned, is the equality of men and women. And here are some thoughts from some of our viewers.
The development of men is dependent on the development of women, and vice versa. So that we can't fully be who we can be unless men have also developed themselves. So it shows that we're part of this organic, you know, we're intertwined. And I think one example that came to my mind is if a woman, you know, is well educated and a strong, empowered, you know, human being, she's going to be a mother to a child who sees this, and then that becomes to a son, and then that's their role model for the capacity of women.
One of the really interesting concepts I find with equality of men and women is actually its absence is the reason, or is a cause of the disunity and strife that we have across the globe. And in the Baha'i teachings, we're told that not until we have the full emancipation of women and their advancement in every facet of society will we be able to actually bring peace upon our civilization. And it makes sense to me, because if you've got, you know, half the globe that are disempowered, that we're not utilizing their capacities and virtues and attributes, how can we possibly hope to actually advance together? And that's in that higher, you know, concept of global civilization, but also sort of transmits then to how we have relationships in the family and how we interact together. You know, my wife and I often talk about what does it mean for us to be partners, you know, to have this partnership where we can both advance in this institution. And it relies on us each taking roles that complements our own skills, our own attributes, and reflecting on how then we can both progress within that framework.
Moving away from the notion that women have to be very, very much like men or take on male characteristics to be seen as equal, to gain respect, to get ahead in the workplace, to have leadership positions and so on. So for us to let go of those sorts of notions, for us to also really value every contribution that a woman is able to make. So not just is she part of the workforce, but for example, you know, the education of children, or the role that a mother would often have to play for many years of her life to recognize and acknowledge that as being just as important as, you know, a contribution that a male could make.
thank you for the viewers who shared their thoughts with us, and that was very interesting.
It was. There were some very interesting viewpoints brought up there. Yeah.
And I especially like the part where they talked about equality within their marriage, so the husband and wife.
Yeah.
So it's not just equality in the within the society, but also within the marriage. So that was a very interesting point.
Yeah, and pointing out that there's a complementarity according to not just the roles that the man and the woman play in marriage, but also according to the strengths that they have. You know, and according to their talents and so on. So I thought that was a good point as well.
Good point. So you have a quote from Emma Watson.
Yes.
Did you want to read us
Emma Watson is actually, she gave a speech at the United Nations, and she's the United Nations ambassador for women.
Yep.
And she gave a speech at the He for She campaign. So maybe I'll just refresh our memories about that. She actually said, she asked a question. How can we affect change in the world when only half of it is invited or feel welcome to participate in the conversation? Both men and women should feel free to be sensitive. Both men and women should feel free to be strong. It's time that we see gender as a spectrum instead of two sets of opposing ideals. And she talked about the definition of feminism. Feminism has become a bit of a dirty word, but actually all it means, and this is what she quotes, is feminism is the belief that men and women should have equal rights and opportunities. It is the theory of the political, economic and social equality of the sexes. I really don't think there's anyone who would disagree with that these days. That's all feminism is. It's not a big deal. It's not. It's certainly not, as some people associate it with, hating men or thinking, well, men are rapists or something ridiculous. It's just what it says. Believing in equal rights and opportunities for both genders. And in fact, then Emma Watson goes on to say that some men are also imprisoned by gender stereotypes. But if we get over, the stereotypes and realize that we're all different as human beings, whether we're man or woman, we need to accept each other as we are, and from then we can progress. Like it says in the Baha'i writings, humanity is like a bird with two wings. One wing is female, one wing is male. If one is underdeveloped, the bird is not going to fly. So we need to develop both so that we come up to our full potential. And that will lead to a better tomorrow.
Yes, a better tomorrow, as our slogan says.
Yes.
So that's also so that point was also raised by one of the interviewees.
Yes, absolutely.
She mentioned that there was a mutual dependencies. So for men to improve, women as well to improve, and vice versa.
Yeah, exactly. So once again, if you have any questions or comments, please leave it in the box below.
And if you'd like to suggest anything, or if you have a feedback on how we're doing, how we can improve things, please leave a comment below as well. So that's the end of our video.
That's it for this time. And so until the next time, peace
and goodwill.